Good to see some familiar faces and names.
Hello, everyone.
Sasha!
Hello.
Been a
Happy
couple of
New
months.
I know, Happy New Year, I guess.
Yeah. Seems strange now, doesn't it? This far into the year to say Happy New Year.
It feels like we're 6 months in, doesn't it?
It does feel like it's going fast already. But, summer soon, so that's all good.
I suppose, yeah.
Hey, Sasha.
Hello.
Hi there, Niall. Haven't seen you for a long time. How long has it been? A couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's been. How's my audio? Is it working okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I think it was London
Yeah, yeah.
in person. Anyway, I think it was London. So that must be what, maybe 4 years ago?
Was it that
Five,
long, was it?
4 or 5
Whoa.
must have been. Yeah.
Okay, wow. Goes so
It's good
fast.
to virtually see the community for sure. Yeah. So
Great, you'd see you long. It's probably your first time to one of these, isn't it?
it is. I keep my head pretty much under the radar as much as possible, but I pop up every now and then. So, but it's good to go. Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, David's put the link to the bingo card in the chat window. This may be new to you, so maybe David will explain it to you.
Well, yeah, we started playing bingo last year, I guess, especially with the esoteric topics that were coming up regularly. So we've created a new version of the bingo, which has fewer things on it because it used to have like Russell's gerbils and things like that, but just don't happen anymore. So I've put the link in the chat. If you click on that, you will get your own unique bingo card. You get a free square in the middle, and then any topics that come up, you can check your square. And if you get a complete row or column, you get to interrupt and shout bingo, and you win. But you don't win anything. Just
Don, you probably didn't know this, but these guys been playing Dash Chat Bingo for about 12 months now.
Is this the point where we should go after sponsors so that we can give out prizes?
All right. Well, that's a new one.
Yeah, they've been playing it in the background. On the odd occasion, someone has actually in the chat shouted out bingo, but only on a rare occasion.
Well, let's see. Let me see if I can get one here.
We may have to explain it again in a minute when the others come in.
Okay, so I guess I should not say out loud what my bingo card says. So this reminds me of what was that show with Groucho Marx, where if you say the secret word, you win $100 and the duck comes down and yeah. Okay.
I think it's been a bit of a secret thing to date, but yeah, it's good that everyone gets to know about it.
So off topic, but I bought a 3D printer. I've been wanting one for quite a long time. I sort of mastered the 3D graphics field with an editor and being able to animate and all of that stuff and create objects as Boolean operations, subtract stuff from other shapes and whatever. But like the 3D printers a couple of years ago were sort of like a sprawling mess on your desktop. But the ones you can get now look more like a microwave oven. They've got a door. It's completely enclosed. The roll of filament mounts in the side and closes in. So I decided to spring for it, and it's been a lot of fun. It's very challenging, very challenging. You need to be looking for a hobby that's complicated to get involved in this, because on the surface, you think I'm just going to print stuff and there it is, it comes out. In actual fact, there's this relationship between the printing temperature, the enclosure temperature, the fan speed that's blowing on the plastic as it's coming out through the nozzle there. And you run into like all sorts of like little issues, stringing blobs, messes that sprawl all over the place. So learning how to
regular printer.
learning how to control this thing is like when you actually get something that prints reasonably decent, you're overjoyed. I mean, it's like you're actually zeroing in on some settings that
I know the feeling.
you have one?
No, but that happens to me with a lot of things, being autistic. It's like when I get something done, it's a victory. I just finished getting something done today. I'm pretty happy. But that's a great idea, a 3D printer. I love it.
My son has one. He prints, but he doesn't print a lot. He just does the occasional Star Wars character and a few bits and pieces.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to do my own stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm designing on the one side and then finding out whether I can print it and, what it takes to print it. And, I'm making progress and I'm starting to realize that it is indeed complicated, but, if you're detail oriented, right? If you're taking notes, if you're keeping track of everything that has happened, and maybe even take a cell phone picture so you can see the details of what's going on, adjust some settings, go for an improvement, you get there.
So at some point in the future, then, do you see yourself not modeling target sites, but 3D printing them?
I am not printing 3D benchies at all. That's the standard little boat that everybody prints out, and they print hundreds of them, and they try to get the ideal benchy. That's a wasted time, in my opinion. What I want to know is whether I can design it and hold it in my hand. That's what I want. I want to run it off and figure out how I can run it off. Some of these shapes, defy the printing technology, and you have to be very creative in the way you can slice like a whole thing into parts and then reassemble it, so pretty complex.
Yeah, I've seen some people use it, but only for hobbies. For example, I saw a guy on YouTube that 3D prints his own Star Wars costumes. So, like full-blown Star Wars costumes and big, like, robotic stormtroopers.
Oh, wow.
And he carves them up bits by bits. So the helmet's in, like, 8 pieces. And then he puts it together and pastes it all together and everything. But it looks amazing in the end.
Okay. I belong to a Facebook group called Robbie the Robot Builders Group. Okay. If you know Forbidden Planet, the movie, the sci-fi movie.
Yes, Robbie the Robot.
Okay. There are people making full-size Robbie the Robots.
No!
Full size, and they'll like print a piece like about that big, and they just keep pasting them and gluing them and whatever until they have the whole thing. It's amazing.
Like Lego.
It'd be interesting to see a 3D printed version of an ideogram, and then to use that so that you could touch it and you could, I don't know, just kind of, there's just the tactile input. It'd be interesting to see what the results are.
A 3D printed ideogram. In other words, take a 2D pen stroke and turn that into a three-dimensional extruded
Object.
You've got those
object.
pens
Yeah.
you can do that with already. The 3D pen. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, I did something like that. I did my signature. Okay, I had to look up on Google, how do you turn a pen stroke into like a three-dimensional shape that you can print? I actually figured out how to do it, and I did it. It's complicated like everything else is, but like, it's kind of like, okay, I learned how to do that now. Can I take my signature and embed it into a flat piece of plastic? So now instead of being extruded outward, it's indented inward. It's all these like little, design games, I guess.
Yeah.
It's also very similar to the concept of augmented reality in terms of, looking at if you could 3D print a location as a form of your state 6, but then step into the location through augmented reality.
Yeah.
You know, there's a video game concept at the moment called Death Stranding for any gamers out there, and it's set in a sort of post-apocalyptic world where there's a very, very isolated community where they live alone, simply because of the atmosphere. They can't go outside. So if they do have to maneuver from one part of this location to the other, they send themselves the coordinates through a digital format. It's reprinted in a physical sort of way, and then it's augmented back in a visor-like system so that you can navigate the worlds from this underground bunker-like situation. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how technology will bring remote viewing into a place where we can really, really step into it on a different sort of dimensional level, into the targets, you know, and it'll be fascinating to see how that pans out.
That's pretty cool. I have a feeling that now that the 3D manufacturing companies are starting to like make more user-friendly, you know, packaged 3D printers, you know, again, sort of like a microwave oven. I'd give them another 5 years, and like I think it's really going to take off. They'll have solved most of the like little nitty-gritty issues that are troubling right now. They'll have it'll become more like a plug and play. You want to print this, put it in, and it'll figure out how to do it.
Well, you know what I've heard is going to be 3D printed. There are plans to create NFTs that are 3D. So you print out your NFT. So I think it's going to really, that'll promote the sale of 3D printers for sure.
How do you 3D print an NFT?
Well, they have them like little warrior figures and stuff. Or, I mean, I even saw at the Mint, they have these diamond shaped coins now in silver and gold. And they're shaped like a diamond, and they've got a little diamond in them. So 3D coins.
There's people doing jewelry too. Yeah.
I've been voting a lot in the Cardano Catalyst funding phase, and I've been reading about all kinds of fascinating new innovations that are coming in Cardano crypto, and NFTs are I can't even begin to start with how many different ideas they have for this. But that's one of them, 3D printing.
Yeah.
It's definitely coming. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we got quite a few people in, and some of the names I don't recognise. So let's go through how we do this. Tonight is just an open chat. Everyone to say hi, because it's been I think it's been a couple of months since we last met up. We have some talks arranged coming up very soon. On not next week. I'll probably take next week off because it's the wife's birthday and she wants to go out. But the week after that, on the 18th, we got John Knowles, and he's going to be talking about numerics and numbers within remote viewing and all the research on that. And the week after that, I'm most probably got ex-Stargate director Del Graff on for a couple hours, and he'll be
great. Yeah.
He'll be answering your questions.
Yay!
So that'd be a good one. And from then on, I'm still arranging for other people to come on. You know, I've got some feeders out there, so we'll just see what we get and see where we want to take it. So for the people that are new, I haven't seen this before, we generally just have a general chat. Usually you end up putting your hand up using the reactions button in the bottom to indicate on the participants window there that you want to ask a question or say something. But generally, there's no real agenda this evening. It's just share, you know, if you want to share anything. I mean, some of us did remote viewing sessions, for example, for the news in December that we didn't review and stuff. Or if you want to ask anyone a question here or ask for advice, it's just a bit of a free-for-all, ask me anything of anyone here in the group, really. So, yeah, let's just take it away. And bearing in mind as well, for the new people, that we do record these as well. And probably tomorrow when I get around to editing the video and stuff, I'd put all these on a YouTube channel, on a podcast as well, for everyone to listen to in their spare time. So that's pretty much it, really. Other than we also have we've been having a bingo thing going along in the wild that some of you aren't aware of. It's called, I think they call it Dash Chat Bingo, and David can post the address for that in the
Yeah, the link and instructions, such as they are in the chat.
yeah. But the people that came late, they don't see that.
Oh no! All right, I'll put it in there again.
Yeah, so if you put it again, and essentially they just have a fun game of bingo, and they mark off what you grab yourself a card and you mark off what topics people talk about, and it's just a little bit of fun, really. And so, who wants to start? I can see Jay Sutton's got their hand up. If you got something you want to share or ask,
I'd just like to say hi. It's my first time in your chat, and I'm delighted that I see this. And I just 2 weeks ago, I'm new to remote viewing, and I just 2 weeks ago got my certificate for my first remote viewing training with Deborah Katz. So it's a pleasure to see you all and to be part of the group, and I'm enjoying it very much.
excellent. Well, welcome, and feel free. If you have anything you want to ask or share or comment on, just feel free to stick your hand up there and join in. And thanks for coming along.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So Don, do you want to kick us off then?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on a book that you actually recommended to us in one of the previous chats, and that is Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée. Do you remember that book?
Yeah. It's quite a few years old now, isn't it? About 20 years, I believe. But it's very much a classic.
If you haven't read this book, if you have any interest in UFOs, ETs, whatever, you got to get this book, because everybody is talking about ETs, and it all started in 1947, or the people who really know stuff think it started in 1945. But what Jacques Vallée has done, he's taken incidents that go back into the Middle Ages, into the Greek and Roman times, and he discusses the similarities in the testimony going forward in time. And after you get through all of this, you start to realize a couple of things. One, people back a couple of hundred years ago actually talked about seeing sailing ships, as in Peter Pan, Captain Hook type ships flying in the sky, landing in their cornfields, talking about, oh yeah, this will be available in a couple of months, and then they take off and fly away. And people before that had a different kind of perception, and today flying saucers are in the conscious mind. That's what people see. He's makes the point that we're just perceiving the current perception of whatever it is that they want us to perceive, which that blew me away. I don't know what to say after something like that. It's truly a mind-expanding book. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a classic. I did see on a website that I'm a member of, bear with me, a few weeks back, they commissioned for something like 100 copies of the book to be. It's called the Daily Grail. They commissioned 100 copies of that book because it is a very well-known classic, to be reprinted in an updated version, and they're all signed by Jacques Vallée as well, and they're at a very good price. On Daily Grail somewhere. If you ever want any paranormal news as well, dailygrail.com is a fantastic news source for paranormal news every single day.
Why don't you put something like that in the chat?
Yeah, let me copy the URL here, but second, bear with me a sec. So that's in the chat there for you guys. That's where I get loads of my news on a daily basis for the last three, 4, maybe even longer than that, actually. Probably about 10 years, I think they've been going. Great news source. And as I said, if you do a search for that book, Passport to Magnolia, on that, you'll pick it up. And if they got any left, I don't know if there are any left, because it was a reasonable price. And as I said, they were all signed by Jacques as well, which is fantastic.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for that, Don. Yeah, it's a great book, a real classic. And as we know, he has a very great interest in remote viewing, and he was actually one of the very first people trained in Ingo's controlled remote viewing as well.
Just a side question about Jacques. Have you heard anything through your sources about his involvement with Robert Bigelow?
Yes, and he's also he's been in the news and stuff, but he's also part of a couple of other projects. Like he's just been assigned up for Project Galileo. I don't know if you've heard about that one.
I have not. I heard he was involved in that thing around the year 2000 about the investigation of ETs and case files and studying all of the case files.
Yeah, he's very involved in everything. He's been involved in analyzing the metamaterials from downed craft. So he's done very serious reports on all that. But at the moment, I know he's been not he's been signed up for this Project Galileo, and I think if I'm correct, that's the one that's it's a new initiative that's been set up by, I can't remember the guy's name, A.V. Loebheb or something, the scientist that tracked the asteroid, I can't remember the word for it, Onimusha kind of asteroid that passed the Earth, and Harvard professor or something. He's essentially recruited some of the top scientists and people interested in UAPs to this Project Galileo, and it's getting quite a lot of traction on places like Twitter and stuff at the moment. Yeah, so have a look at that one. But yeah, Jacques Vallée is a man very much in the know. Very much, for me, he seems very similar in what he's done to How Put-Off, and where How Put-Off is in the
Well,
in the mix of all this.
they're all connected.
They
Putoff
are.
and Vallée and Robert Bigelow. That came out in the what was it, Skinwalkers in the Pentagon book, which is another must read. You must read that book. It's amazing. Briefly, the Army and the Navy, when they got these UFOs, they didn't know what to do with them. And really, they were embarrassed to report them. There was no protocol for it. So they just kind of like suppressed it, even though the UFOs were disabling their nukes, which is a serious, defense concern. But what Vallée, Bigelow, and Putoff and others did was they started examining not only the reports of the person who saw it, but whether there were medical issues involved, whether there was side effects. In other words, like if you saw something, did somebody in your family have some sort of follow-on experience? This was new. Nobody did this sort of research before. That was a mind blower. The people who were seeing UFOs, their families were starting to like have all sorts of strange things. People seeing like, I hate to say this, but like werewolves, like in their yard, 10 feet tall, staring at them, and then they would look again and it would disappear. There's some serious stuff going on. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it, Don, but there's also been some talk, probably actually while we've been away over Christmas, maybe before, from a scientist that's been doing lots of research on people, especially like the pilots that have had the UAP encounters, and how that it's actually changed the physiology of their brains, or they've got different physiology in their brains.
Okay, that was touched on a little bit in the Skinwalkers in the Pentagon book, but I have not, heard anything about that.
Yeah, that's come out over the last couple of months while we've been on Christmas break. There are videos on YouTube. I don't have the links to hand of the scientist that's been doing the research and put out a report on that, and he goes in depth into it. And I'm not quite sure off the top of my head if it's if the people having the UFO experiences had different brain physiology after the encounter, or if they had it anyway and that allowed them to have the encounter.
Okay.
I think it's the first one if I remember correctly, but it's definitely worth looking at that as well.
Well, there's an awful lot of talk about the ETs evolving our genetics because really they want it. They want better bodies on the planet, better thinking, better, functionality, whatever. Seems like that's what ETs have, superior mental capability. That's what they do. They go from place to place. They evolve the genetics that are on the planet, and then they can work with that planet.
Yeah, yeah. To add to this as well, I don't know if I mentioned this late last year, but I managed to, after 20 odd years of trying, get hold of a remote viewing project that Ingo Swan did on Roswell, where he tasked 6 remote viewers to look at Roswell. And I've got that report now. And it's probably one of the best RV reports out there. And it's from, I think the year was 1996, I think he did it. So, way back. I mean, Roswell was known, but nowhere like what it is today.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the data the remote viewers got back then in 96 is exactly the same as the data that I got when I worked with Dick Haugar and we did a Roswell project for Farsight probably about 8 years ago. And
Yeah, that's a classic. Yeah, that is a classic.
That's on my YouTube channel, so people can see that. But not only that, Deborah Lynn Katz was interested in all this as well, and she knows my data, and she knows I gave her a copy of Ingo's data, and she also did a project where she tasked her remote viewers on Roswell as well, and they came up with the exact same data as the both of us in our projects, and she's now doing a big thing where she's doing an analysis of all the data from all the different people side by side over the 3 projects going back 30 years. And that might be out soon. And once she's done it, maybe we can get her on a Friday to go through it in detail.
Very cool. All right, let me mute out here.
Excellent. I don't know how to say this name. Is it Salea? You have your hand up next, and please tell me how to say your name.
Oh, hi, that's me.
Hi there.
It's Sila, and it's actually, I'm Rose.
Yeah, I guess that now. You keep changing your name.
Well, I use this one for yoga because it's a strange new class, and I just forgot to change it because, for privacy reasons. So sorry. And I'm using it also now more on Twitter and in Discord. So it's kind of a new moniker that I have this thing as an autistic person with names. I have 2 or 3 names for my animals. I don't ever have one name for anybody. So it's kind of a thing with me. But the question I've been thinking about for a long time, and I mean years, but lately it's been coming up because I keep hearing, that there are AI. And I mean, I purposed myself 10 years ago to read Roger Penrose's books on the probability or possibility of artificial intelligence from a mathematical point of view. And I read The Emperor's New Mind and Shadows of the Mind by Roger Penrose, who's the emeritus Roswell professor of mathematics at Oxford. So these were math books, and it took me 4 years to read these books. I mean, I was reading them on the bus, going to yoga, and just carefully going through and making sure that I understood. And the second book, In Shadows of the Mind, Roger Penrose pretty much eliminates the possibility of there being an algorithm for artificial intelligence based on mathematics because of Kurt Gödel's P sentences and it goes to the Kant, the philosophy of Kant. This sentence is false. So if it's true, it's false. And if it's false, it's true. According to Kurt Gödel, all mathematics, all of it, every single stitch of mathematics and logical formal theories are subject to Gödel's deadly theorem, that they're all inconsistent and cannot be proven to be true. So he concludes from that you can't write a mathematical algorithm for truth because mathematics itself doesn't have an internal mechanism for verifying its own truth. And so now I'm hearing all of people talking about ETAIs. And part of me at the beginning was thinking, well, maybe they're a combination, because you could take the nerve cells from a rat and you can make a robot out of it. So I think what I'm most comfortable with is that these ETs, they're not really AIs. They're a combination of some living process and some synthetic process. And I mean, this is the kind of visions I was seeing. I still see these, they're like spheres covered with eyes, and they're interdimensional creatures as far as I can tell. They aren't like flesh and blood type creatures, but they have a consciousness and they're machines at the same time. So, I mean, I've seen these things, and I mean, I've seen a lot of them. I've seen them over and over again in visions. You know, when I was doing yoga, I would see them, but when I was meditating, I would see them. And they seem to have certain functions. They seem to be able to open and close portals. And this is something, again, that is interdimensional. So my question is, Roger Penrose says that there's no mathematics for consciousness, but he begins. He talks about the quantum superpositions that are happening in your brain. A lot of people would argue that there aren't any, but Roger Penrose, and Stuart Hameroff from Arizona are arguing that there are quantum superpositions in your brain called gamma synchronies. And Roger Penrose argues that what is happening in a superposition is you've got more than one universe intersecting. So when the particle sort of splits into two, you've got two separate geometrical universes happening there. And that's happening inside your brain. So you're sort of entering, more than one, probably more than two. Your superpositions in your brain are giving you access in this manner, hyperdimensionally, to other universes. And there's no math for that. You've got Einstein's theory only applies to one universe at a time. So this is the problem. It may not be that the AI is impossible, but we don't have the math for it right now. We don't. But of course, someone else may. I'm just wondering what y'all think of that, because there is one scientist on Earth who says that AI is impossible, and he's a pretty smart guy, Roger Penrose. And it's because of Kurt Gödel, mathematician from Princeton. And I mean, Einstein went to Princeton, he said, so he could hang around with Kurt Gödel. And nobody liked Kurt because they didn't like what his theory was doing. And no one talks about him because no one has really got a good, rebuttal. And we don't want to talk about how math and science are not really proving anything. I mean, they have a lot of good evidence, but there's no real proof. And I think these issues are going to become popular issues, personally. I think they're going to start coming up as people start to try and build AI. So that's kind of my question. Do you think AI is really possible?
Any of you guys want to answer this one? Caroline?
I was actually going to suggest that, is he saying that AI is not possible or artificial consciousness?
He's saying, well, what they're saying is you can simulate and make probably a computer program or an algorithm that could fool people, but it doesn't really have the consciousness, like the qualia that we have when, what they call it, the Bing, where you have this world that opens up inside of you and you have all these manifestations. Does a computer really have that? How could we prove that? One of the ways I thought we could prove it would be to have, Data, the robot, look at a quantum superposition and see if he can collapse it. That would indicate a consciousness. So what do you think, Annie?
I think Henny wants to say something, I think.
You're
Yeah,
muted.
that's it.
I think you are mixing up intelligence and consciousness. AI is about artificial intelligence, and the definition of it from a computer science point of view would be a system that is able to make decisions, intelligent decisions along the line with a set of parameters. There is maths that is describing it. I made a diploma in artificial intelligence. It's not an easy maths, but it's existing and it's working. There are different artificial intelligences now that are currently usually focusing on certain fields of decision making. But if you have seen later developments, there are quite a lot of projects that are working on what they call a general artificial intelligence. And also there are artificial intelligences that, for example, respond to speech or text. And they say that the criteria for an artificial intelligence to pass as a good artificial intelligence is that someone who is faced with this artificial intelligence cannot tell that it's not a human being. For example, if you are talking to an AI chatbot, there are plenty of chatbots now. If you cannot tell that you are actually conversing with a chatbot, that artificial intelligence passed the #1 test of artificial intelligence, which is indistinguishable from human. Especially, I have been doing artificial intelligence in vision. Artificial intelligence in vision field hugely surpasses the capabilities of human beings with accuracy. If you check for the artificial intelligence that runs in Tesla, that's quite an amazing artificial intelligence. It is requiring huge computing power to do and to run, but it exists. So I think probably you were confusing intelligence and consciousness. Artificial intelligence.
That's a really good point. And I can see that point very clearly. And the problem gets into when people confuse what's true. And you could have artificial intelligences that are teaching people, and people asking for guidance from an artificial intelligence. And these are the areas where I start wondering. And then when we're trusting the alien artificial intelligences to tell us the truth, this is where that's my question. I mean, yeah, sure, they can create this computer droid that can act like a conscious being, but then can you believe anything they say? Because I mean, how do they know what's true? Because they don't. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying.
Artificial intelligence is basically modeling the way humans learn. So can you trust a human being?
No, that's the thing. You have to be very careful, right, when it comes to truth. And that's sort of the question I'm asking, because some of them are lovely, the creatures from outer space or interdimensional creatures, but they say incredibly beautiful things too, and convince people that they care about them and that they care about the earth. And I'm like, got the brakes on that. Like, I just am not sure where this is all coming from. And it would just be so nice to believe it. So it makes me very wary. And then to have there will be people who say, well, it's artificial intelligence, so it's probably more true than human intelligence. And I think we need to be prepared for this, because it's not. It's less true. Our intuition tells us what the truth is. I believe truth is accessible to consciousness with Bing, the consciousness that's really conscious, not accessible to artificial intelligence, which is a beautiful system, and I admire it, and I'm very impressed with it. But I don't think that it can give you reliably truth. And people are going to get tripped up by this. This is, something I'm concerned about. I'm going to write about it too.
Anyone want to add anything to this conversation? Or are we good on this one?
Just briefly,
Actually, I wouldn't
guys.
mind. Oh,
I'm sorry, pardon me. It's a real quick one. No, for
no, no,
anybody
no.
interested on the topic, I'm currently reading James Barnett's book on. It's called Our Final Invention. It's probably the most frightening horror that I've read in quite a few years. That's not related to horror. So for anybody interested on that topic, it's a pretty good one-stop shop.
Cool, thank you.
And the other person, do you want to go for it with what you're going to say?
What I want to say about artificial intelligence, I think the operative word here is artificial. I personally am struggling with the word what intelligence means, but it is artificial. Was it Henny who mentioned that it responds? But then we have to ask ourselves, what is the difference between react and respond? There is a difference. And will the AI have feelings? Because the humans have feelings. You say there will be some AI that you won't be able to tell the difference between a human and an AI. I see auras. Will the AI have auras? So I think with all that, I don't think an AI could ever be on the exact level of a human being. And and on a spiritual level, it doesn't have a soul. And if you think of the petrol that drives the car, it's the soul that drives the human. And if the AI doesn't have a soul, it's limited in many ways. And that's it. That's it.
Good point. Yeah. In terms of a soul, I have a similar opinion to you. And I've translated, the Greek for soul is actually psyche. Psyche is the word for soul. So it doesn't have a psyche. It has intelligence of a kind. It has a logical sequence intelligence, but it doesn't have a psyche.
Interesting thoughts, guys. I don't know what I think on this, to be honest. I think AI could be revolutionary to us as human beings, but I also think that there is the potential for danger there as well. As to the soul and all that kind of stuff, I don't know how that fits in. All I can say to you is I did do an RV once, and I did. It was the Roswell, and I did feel I did integrate and get data from some kind of AI intelligence, and it felt different than any human kind of RV I've done. But yeah, that's no proof for anything. I guess you guys would have to experience that kind of thing yourself, really, on this. But Anita's had her hand up for quite a long time, so let's let Anita share with us.
All right, it would be a different topic if that's
Go
okay.
for it. Go for it.
So back to RV topic. A couple days ago, I had a session where the target was a building, front-loaded as a building. I'm practicing architecture. So I managed to work up such a strong target contact where I reached a point where the wall of the building was so clearly in front of me that I could put my hand and reach down and touch the wall with my hand. That rarely happens in my RV, that I get such a clear connection. And well, the thing I wanted to say, and the question, I guess, it's as I reached my hand and I put it on the wall. Now, this isn't just, you can imagine doing that anytime in your mind. It's not the same thing. This is when it's so clear, you're literally putting your hand on it. You see your hand and it's a contact. The thing is, when I did that, this wall had a reflective surface. And I could see my face on the reflection on the windows. I saw it was me. The hair was a bit different, and I had a facial expression of concern, which is not how I was feeling here. So it was me, but it was a different me. So my question is, what is that? Do we have a separate, is it the astral body? Do we have a separate self, which is at the target sites? Is that how RV works? Has anyone else experienced Is this part of bilocation? Do we have our body at the target site? Can someone
That is
elaborate?
commonly reported with astral projection and lucid dreaming, which there's, it's kind of hard to draw a line between those things or say firmly what those experiences that people are reporting really are. But there's a thread of people saying, don't look in the mirror when you lucid dream or astral project because you'll see something horrifying. And then equally, there's a thread of thought which goes, well, I did look in the mirror and it just looked like me and it was totally normal. But it's a common experience for things to look a bit different in those sorts of, my camera's off, but I'm doing air quotes here, out of body modalities. So, I mean, maybe it's just you're reconstructing visuals, when we have memories, the way human memory works, we don't actually remember things. We have a whole bunch of associations. Oh, my mom was there, we were at this restaurant, the weather was like this, and we rebuild the scene somehow. We're creating it, not remembering it literally as it is. So perhaps when we use modalities like that, we're filling in the blanks. I mean, even our conscious perception, like you're sitting here now looking at Zoom, 90% of what you're perceiving through your senses is just your brain making stuff up because it can't be bothered to look. Our perception's rubbish and unreliable. So there's nothing to suggest that it should be any less rubbish or unreliable when we're doing strange out-of-body modalities. So I'm sorry, that doesn't answer your question at all. I don't know.
Well, it helps. So you're suggesting it's my mind creating myself there, but it was just something about it being on a reflection. If I would have looked at myself and seen myself, that would have been okay. But the fact that it was on the reflection of a surface, it was so off guard and completely unexpected. So I'm just wondering if other people have had an RV experience like that. And yeah.
Anyone else had an experience that may mirror that? I'm not sure I have. I'm just trying to think.
Great choice of words.
I had I had a target where I drew a person in front of a screen, and the target was my computer screen. So I didn't actually see myself, but I actually drew myself in front of my computer screen. So kind of sort of close.
I've never seen myself at a target, but I don't think I've ever bothered to look. I'm too busy in recording the data, I think. I'm just trying to think. No, I don't think I have. I've had similar experiences to what I need to have, but not in remote viewing, in what I call my classical psychic training, but never in remote viewing. But, it kind of leads on to the project that I did with some of you guys here as participants on Facebook in December, where I did the target where I set everyone the target of Stonehenge for a 5-minute window. And just to see if it was at all possible to see other non-physicals at targets, at the same time as I created the target, I, using classical psychic techniques, envisioned my non-physical body hovering over Stonehenge in that 5-minute window to see if the remote viewers would pick that up. And the data seemed to me to indicate that they did pick that up. But obviously the big question in that is, did I just insert that as intent into the target, or was there a non-physical part of me actually above Stonehenge? Which is, the big question, really.
I mean, I was a viewer on that, and the life I perceived didn't make any sense at all. And I've never remote viewed a life form that came out like that. It was totally messed up and partly artificial, and it didn't look like anything. It didn't look like Daz at all. It was ridiculous. I wanted to do more work on the session, and I just couldn't. I was just AOLing so much, and so just throwing my toys out the pram about this ridiculous data. It was very weird.
I don't know, Daz. I had a subject wrapped up in a blanket being kidnapped, and the blanket was light colored. And then this subject moved from one place to another like it was teleporting, like it didn't have any reason to go from one place to another. And I started to get a sense of strangeness, and I had the landscape. I had this landscape of grassland with fences. So I think I had elements of that too, that I'm wondering if it has to do with time, because you're viewing yourself at a different time. So you're going to be there, kind of like Back to the Future. You're going to be there in that time frame. And so if you go from a different time frame, you're going to interact with yourself in some way.
It's an interesting project and an interesting question. You know, how are we at targets? Do we, you know, and it's something that I think half the community through their practice believes that we are going to targets, and I think there are half that thinks that we're not. And I can't off the top of my head think of a way to prove either case at this point. You know, I tried with that.
I was just going to say, one experiment, Dick Allgaier, have you seen the tape where they went back to see, they had tried to plant something where they would see it in the future, and it came out as a marking on a photograph or something that they wanted to see if they could influence the future, and it would indicate a presence of a sort. Gosh, now it's been so long since I saw that particular video, and I watched so many, but there is a video by Dick Allgaier that approaches this, and it's quite a few years old.
I think it was called something, bear with me, it's going back like 15 years.
I know, it's wild.
Something Brady. It was a famous, I think what they tried to do is go back 100 years or so to the past, to a photograph of a famous, or created by a famous photographer, an American Civil War photographer, and write a message on the photograph so that they could find that message now, you know, 100 years later in the future. And they, I think they claimed that they analyzed the photograph and they could see the characters on there.
Yeah.
I looked at it and I wasn't personally convinced there were any characters on there, but yeah, I do vaguely remember the video and project now, but I'm not sure it's conclusive. I think they may have presented it at Irva. I'm not sure. It was an interesting project, but it's not available online. But if you guys are interested, I can make a note and see if Dick can make it.
There is an article online. There's a write-up of it somewhere.
Yeah, there is. Yes, I can't remember where though, but there was a video as well. Something Brady. I can't remember the first name of it. But I can see if I'll see if I can get access to it in some way.
Yeah, because it was very good. I mean, yeah, it's not totally convincing because, you know, Kurt Goodell, but it was very, I mean, there's a weight to it, I felt, you know.
That Jeremy McGowan fellow over at UAPX, it's a YouTube channel, he had posted this challenge because he's kind of a skeptic. He's trying to see if remote viewing is real. So it's one of those generic kind of what's in the box sort of things. Anyways, the moral of the story is as soon as he put out that video, that challenge to people, he had a localized phenomena in his room over where the thing was that he tasked viewers to view, and it caused his dog to freak out. So there's people over there on their forums who kind of freaked out and went, oh, what if remote viewers actually went in there psychically? So that's a little bit of anecdotal suggestion of something like that occurring.
I mean, there are those experiments by, I think, Dean Radin. Congratulations, anybody who has him on their bingo card, which were like double slit experiment things looking at conscious observers affecting the interference pattern or lack thereof from that. And that was done with like people sitting in a room next to a shielded optical setup, and they were just instructed to kind of move their awareness in there and look at it. And it did influence slightly what was going on in there. And Daz, I know you've done one thing many moons ago with a random number generator. So our conscious observation of things alters them, but you know, like how much does our conscious observation of things alter what we perceive in our physical lives? You know, not obviously much, even though it may do on a sort of scientific level. But as to whether we're there or not, there are case studies of sort of people manifesting as apparitions while particularly separated spouses where the husband's gone off to war and he just keeps turning up in the wife's house and they're writing letters to each other about it. And she's going, will you stop doing that? It's kind of weird. It's freaking, and he's like, oh, but I want to see, and like it happens, but it's, are we doing that during remote viewing? And, if we're defining remote viewing as anything within the protocol, then the answer could be both rather than yes or no, because if somebody's capable of whatever kind of weird manifesting apparitions out of body modality that is, you can do that within the remote viewing protocol, and that's fine. I think for me doing CRV or TRV, just sitting here with a piece of paper, I would be very surprised if anybody noticed me there. Josh noticed.
Thank you for that bingo, David.
Oh, you're welcome. Did you get it?
Yes, I did.
Yay! Congratulations.
I think the differentiation though on that would be intent, like because I intended myself to travel there and be seen, whereas normal people doing normal RV targets, and I think I said this to you guys before. I've seen, and many of us here, and like Brett and others have seen thousands of remote viewing sessions now, and when my training ones that I got on my website, people send me emails and say, look, I did your training target, what do you think of this? So I've seen their RV sessions on the very same targets, and on ones that I've got on there, like the Eiffel Tower, where I send them to a very specific place, and the tasking is a very specific time, the second that picture was taken. Of all the people that do that exact target at that exact 1 second marker, they never report seeing any other remote viewers at the target site. And tens of thousands of remote viewers have done that target. So you'd expect that target site now to be really busy with incarnate souls of remote viewers, but they're never ever recorded in any remote viewing session.
That's not a very good example, because that target has a real strong vibe of tourism and loads of people milling around sightseeing, which would include all the other remote viewers, I guess.
It does, but there are other, that was just an example. There are other targets that you could say the same thing for, and you just don't see it. In the tens of thousands of RV sessions I've seen everywhere, including Stargate, Ingo stuff, and everything, you just don't see anyone reporting discarnate entities at target sites unless the targets are esoteric in nature, or there is an intent in some way for that to be seen or to happen.
If I can just mention briefly, I can't quite recall if I read it in Lynn's book, or he told me himself. Lynn Buchanan was one of my teachers, but he talked about remote viewing a target in a museum, where he was describing several different insects that were in this cabinet, and he picked up on the presence of somebody else being there, and he describes that person as being a female and of Asian origin, and it's claimed, could be grossly paraphrasing here, that's how they discovered the Chinese were also doing what they were doing. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with that story. I'm not sure if it's in the 7th Sense or he told me it himself, or I heard it through another teacher of mine, Paul O'Connor, but is anybody else familiar with that?
Why would the Chinese be in a museum looking at beetles?
I don't know. It's a good point. He just described it. I can't fully recall the whole story. It was maybe like 10 years ago, but he described it as he was tasked to describe this in detail, these beetles, but they were also in this location as well. So whether the other task force was tasked to see if anybody else was doing it, or I don't know, I'm not sure, but that's what he described.
I mean, it's conceivable the Chinese viewers were viewing the US RV unit rather than the beetles.
Yes, absolutely. That seems more.
Show up in your awareness that isn't at the target.
Yeah.
You know who else has had experiences where they're out of body and people have seen them is Preston Dennett. He has a whole tape on that on YouTube about his own out of body travels, and he's cultured himself and he's practiced this, spent a lot of time with his mother who's on the other side, and he has sort of made arrangements to appear to people that he knows, and they have seen him out of body. So I think we should have him visit us here, and we could talk to him about all kinds of stuff. Like he's not a remote viewer, but he's involved and he knows remote viewers for sure. And, he knows a lot about all these different kinds of strange phenomena. And I would love to ask him some questions.
If you guys have any people that you'd want me to try to approach, feel free to message me on Facebook or send me an email, and I'll try with some of these people. Some people will turn us down, but I can only try. Lee, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you like to go next?
Yes, hi there, everybody. My name's Lee. This is my first time to come as well. I'm zooming in from Los Angeles, California. Daz, I've been a big fan of you for about 5 years now. Ed Reardon and Dick Algier, I love you guys. I think you're amazing. You're very inspiring. I first discovered remote viewing in 2007. And a year before that, I actually did have my very first out-of-body experience, which was totally life-changing. But needless to say, I got into remote viewing, and sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm horrible. But I also am a member of Edgar Cayce's ARE, which is a nonprofit group that he started. If you don't know who Edgar Cayce was, he was a psychic in the early 20th century that could go into trance, and his readings helped a lot of people. And so I'm a big fan of him as well. I just wanted to say hi and say thank you for doing this. It's nice to be around people who are into this topic and who can appreciate the depth of this kind of conversation. I did want to close just quickly by saying that on what you guys were discussing a moment ago about, I believe it was Anita that said she had that experience of her saw herself differently in a remote viewing session. I haven't had it happen during a remote viewing, but I was taking a class on astral projection once, and I did have a moment where I experienced myself in the future. And then when it happened, you're like, oh, this was what I experienced earlier. It's kind of trippy. One thing about the Edgar Cayce stuff is we have a meditation that we do that Edgar Cayce suggested as far as how to meditate, but he also does dream interpretation. So I enjoy doing a lot of Edgar Cayce believed our dreams were today's answers to tomorrow's questions, and so dream interpretation has been very helpful because I get a lot of information in the dream state that's even more clear than when I view. But anyway, for what it's worth, I can relate to everything you've shared. Thanks for letting me say hello, and thanks again, Daz, for this group. Thank you.
Just a quick question, Lee, if it's possible.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thank you. You experimented the future as in movie Next with Nicolas Cage like this, or longer than that?
It's a great question. When I experienced that moment in the future, when I was in the class, I was in a trance-like state when it occurred, and I was experiencing myself for a very brief moment in time. I was aware that I was eating food a certain way, just the simple act of eating, and it was done different. It wasn't like eating a normal thing. It was different, like pop. It's just something special. The way I was eating the food, I was, as silly and mundane as that sounds, I was experiencing the moment. I didn't see it like a movie. I was experiencing the moment of the future. I was experiencing my future. I wasn't seeing it. I was there. I was for like a fraction of a moment. It wasn't very long at all, but it was long enough for me to discern, oh, that's that's what I was. This is happening now. It's that was in the past. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it reminds me of an experiment that Ed Reardon has had on this, exactly the same way you described it. So yes, thank you.
You bet. Dreams are for me, my dreams are very visual and like movies. But this particular thing, I was there. I was, for a very small fraction of time, I was experiencing the future. I wasn't consciously controlling it. It was just sort of happening. And I was aware that I was experiencing this moment now, even though it hadn't happened. And until the future arrived, I didn't know what it was. It was so strange, It was, anyway, good question. Thank you.
Lee, if I can just ask you a question. You said did you say you were a member of ARE and Edgar Cayce?
Yes.
Just because I'm actually researching a topic that involves ARE and Edgar Cayce at the moment, and I just wondered if you had, it's a bit cheeky this, if you had access to any of their records or archives.
I do have access to all of Edgar Cayce's readings, over 14,000. Members can go and search all the readings online. You can
probably not I'm not after the readings itself. I'm after if I could get access to funded projects that ARE did in around about 1972 to 78.
I would think so. My intuition is, are you looking into the Egypt, the Sphinx?
I am, yes.
Yes, yeah, the paw under the Sphinx. That's an interesting. Yes, I believe that information is available somewhere, but I haven't myself personally. I haven't looked into it.
Okay, maybe if I could get your email address or something, so we could communicate this.
We've communicated before.
Okay, excellent.
My email. We can talk about it. If you want me to check into it, I can. But yeah, it's
because they have, and for the people here that don't know, I'm doing research because I'm researching lots of threads on Ingo Swan projects at the moment, and I recently acquired an Ingo Swan project of remote viewing what was under the pyramids and under the Sphinx, and essentially it tallies with the Edgar Cayce Great Hall of Records, the archives of Atlantis, and all that kind of stuff. And Ingo's report details alien machines underneath there and all kinds of stuff. But not only that, and I can share some. I've been doing. See what in my research, I've actually found that the ARE Foundation also sponsored SRI separately to do 4 projects at the Sphinx with not remote viewing, but with actual physical geological detectors that they created, and they took there and they went there in 72, 74, 76 and 78. And most of them were funded by the ARE Foundation. But Ingo went there as well, and I can share a couple of things on this with you guys that I've just got recently. If you can see my screen here a sec. So this is a postcard actually sent back from Egypt by Ingo when he visited the Sphinx, and he was doing remote viewing sensing there. And I think this was in part paid for by ARE. And he says here in the picture here, he says was successful in the way with the Sphinx, and this was a postcard that went back to Janet Mitchell. And if I move this out of the way a sec, there might be another picture I can show you. And there's a picture as well of actually Ingo inside the Hall of Records, not Hall of Records, sorry, the Great Grand Hall, is it, in the Great Pyramid. So I'm researching all this stuff at the moment. Now I've also got conversations with a scientist that I found who worked for 30 years at SRI. No one really knows of his name. His name is Dolphin Lambert. And he was the guy that got the funding from ARE to go to the Sphinx, I think 3 or 4 times in total. And it's a bit dubious on what they found there, because Ingo says he found something. Ingo's RV sessions that were done independently say there was something there. But the geological survey maps that came back from SRI and some of the studies kind of indicate they found a void, but it might be geological, but there wasn't any rooms and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to track down all this kind of stuff, and extra funding from not extra funding, but extra maybe project report from ARE may fill in some of the blanks for me on this.
Mhm.
Excellent. So if we can maybe get
Let's
together
talk
off
about it.
off camera or something, that'd be great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me let a couple of people in a minute, and I think Anita had her hand up for a while.
So on the topic of can anybody see us when we are remote viewing a target site? Can anybody see us at the target site? When I remote view people, I don't use CRV. I don't know how CRV works. Maybe my method is a bit more in the target, immersive. When I remote view people, they start out blurry, but I know it's a person. When I achieve a fully clear image of a person, when I see them, they see me. And I'm trying to figure out ways where that won't happen, because it is a horrible nuisance. Because I'm trying to be stealthy at the target site. It's not that I'm trying to be in the target site. I just want to see the person and draw their face. When I see them, yeah.
Sorry. Just going back to the idea that it's like a reconstruction process when we have
Simulation.
simulation.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a simulation in the context that you were meeting that person, where you were interacting face to face and you are seeing what that would be like, or is there like a feel?
No, it can't be that. It's a good idea, but it can't, because I'm trying my best not to be detected or seen.
How do you know they see you? Is it feeling? Or
I feel that they react, and I see them looking at me, and they look right at me, and they begin talking to me, and we end up in a two-way conversation. And usually most of them get upset and say, "How did you get in here?" It's as if I'm a ghost that suddenly appears in their room, and they get scared or aggressive, most of them.
Have you ever verified whether anybody is consciously aware of this? Because we know that we can like interview either the subconscious mind or the higher self, or however you want to conceptualize it.
I was getting to that. I was going to suggest maybe Das could set up a project where us remote viewers get assigned to remote view each other, where somehow we can check if we notice each other, because then we're a remote viewer going there. Plus, it's the subject at the target site is also a remote viewer. We might be able to figure this out.
The problem is it won't. The problem is with any other project we're doing, the intent of the tasker thinking that he wants that to happen at the target might actually make it part of the target and make it happen, whether it's real or not.
But it's the person, the target person who's being remote viewed would have to say, wait a minute, I just had this experience of someone here. And they would not have had the suggestion or such, if that's possible to arrange.
It might, yeah.
It might be possible, but is it ethical?
No, but we would sign up somehow.
Buddy up kind of way to do it, yeah.
There should be a way.
Then there's the perception, like the expectation that it may happen. Then
I think I've seen a study on this somewhere. I'm sure I've seen a study where they paired people up, or they paired people to look at other people, and they had to record doing it at set times.
Oh, this was people who know when they're being watched.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a study on that, wasn't there? I saw
Yeah, and they did it over like a video feed as well. So there was a camera pointing at the back of people's heads, and somebody was watching it or not watching it based on like a random number generator turning it on and off. And people could tell whether they were being watched. But I mean, remote viewing a human being and trying to communicate with them is a little bit more invasive than just, you know.
Maybe we should set up a discussion thread on it on Facebook and see if we can work up a project and do something on it.
A protocol, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
I just add one more thing. In particular, I remember one session front loaded as a person. I was just practicing to draw faces. The target person eventually noticed me, at least within the RV session experience that I was having, whether real or simulation. This person got very angry and was saying that I woke him up from the dead. And that's when I ended the session immediately. It was very freaky. So he could see me and he was upset. So yeah, that happens a lot.
Did you say the modality that you use isn't CRV?
Yeah, it's my own.
Is it more, does it involve like theta brainwave state, trance, and getting very...
Only if I'm always in that state, because I don't do any preparation.
Okay.
I do for my visual probes. They require me to do a lot of brain activity readjustments, mindfulness, switching areas off and switching other areas on. But that's just for my visual probes. For most of the other things I do know, I don't use any.
When this individual noticed you, that's what you were doing, the visual probe?
I'm not sure. Yes, this probe, yeah. I call it the TS probe. Yeah, I was using the TS probe. It requires me to rearrange in my mind. I basically have to switch some areas off and other areas on. So yeah.
I mean, I'd
don't know
be
if it's
really
theta
interested
or...
to hear more about it, but maybe you are switching into another modality where you're getting a different form of data and you're interacting with the target differently. That is distinct from when we sit here with a piece of paper and do sketches and go, blah, 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 it's done. You know, it sounds like, if you look at what the Hawaii guys do, they're doing a whole bunch of cool down and theta and Gansfeld and God knows what else. And then there's ERV where you're getting into a trance. And that feels a lot more, you know, magical or mystical for anybody who still hasn't got that on their bingo card. To me, whereas you sit there and do paper-based RV, you just get what you get. It's quick, visuals are fleeting, and if this is just totally subjective, my subjective experience, it feels like you don't touch the target in the same way that you do if you maybe do more involved things. I mean, I can't back this up with evidence. That's just my gut feeling.
I'm very immersive in the target site. I'm not on the paper. I'm in the site. I have this hologram of the site and I'm in there touching things and looking around. It's very immersive like that. I don't know if CRV is.
Maybe trying to be less in there. You could.
No, I don't want to change it though. That's the whole method, and I don't have anything.
In terms of your intent, I'll just say this very, very quickly. Come find me on the Discord if you want to talk about this for hours, but you could try indirecting it. I think Lynn teaches this with the health apps thing. I haven't done the course. It's also in TDS with the gingerbread thing, but you use something, the concept is analogous to the Poppet doll in Hoodoo, where you have an intermediary thing. So the gingerbread man thing is just the silhouette of a human, and you probe that, you know, and if that person has terrible diseases that you as a viewer might not want, or horrible emotional experiences, you're not asking a question of the individual. You're saying, this thing in front of me on the paper represents the individual. Okay, picture on the paper. What do you feel like? You know, you're not saying that real person. You're just saying, here's my image. So you create like a psychological proxy.
Copy, yeah. Something
so maybe
to work
try that.
on.
But this is
Good
ridiculously
idea.
esoteric and subjective, so I will shut up about this. But come on the Discord and find me, and there's lots of weirdos on there who love this stuff, so we can discuss it more there if you want.
Excellent.
It'd
Thanks
be
for
worth
that.
meditating over.
What was that, Josh?
That's some bingo cheating is what that is.
Right, okay. All I can add to this, Anita, is I've viewed thousands of people now in RV sessions, but you know, maybe because I've got a different perspective on this. The only ones that have ever seen me are, I would say, the ones I can't feedback on, the esoteric type alien kind of very strong spiritual people ones. But you know, that just might be because I have a belief system that I don't go to targets. You know, it could just be as simple as that. But that, you know, that's all I can offer on it at this stage. until we know more. And Don, you've had your hand up for a long time. Would you like to go next?
Mute, yeah. You know, a lot of us here as remote viewers, we have experienced elements of telepathy. I would like to talk about that a little bit because when you're remote viewing a site and you encounter someone and you probe them, you can pick up their thoughts. You can get information from what they were thinking of at the moment. And I've done this, and I've actually tried to run a few experiments on my own. I've tried to contact my children before I would call them on the cell phone to see what they would say in advance. And the experiments that I've had are surprisingly, you know, optimistic. It seems to be working, and I'm just wondering if others have had experiences, telepathic experiences that were notable. It's an open question.
When you say telepathic experience, do you mean telepathy within CRV, remote viewing, or just telepathy generally? Telepathy generally, yeah, I experience that all the time, as do other people. I know, but in CRV, no, I've never had that. So do you mean it in remote viewing or just in general?
And both, but
Right.
I'm starting to take advantage of it as a genuine kind of like conversation motif. Seems like not too many people know about it. There are some people who are good at it, can get information, can extract information from you without you knowing. And I'm just wondering, you know, whether there are others that have experienced this.
Yeah, go on YouTube, look for the TDSRV training course from 2001 with Prue Calabrese. Skip to lesson 7, and in the first half hour of that, she teaches you to do it. It's no more difficult than stage 4.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of moving your intent about. Super easy, super ethically sketchy, and super fun.
Yeah, no, try this. Try, before you call somebody up, try opening a mental conversation with that person. Ask them a question. Now, here's the thing. You need to be patient. Not everybody is going to respond to you instantaneously like you're having a voice conversation face to face. There's something about the mind, consciousness, I don't know what it is. You can ask a question, you might hear dead air, and then an answer. Okay, I don't know how it works. All I know is that it seems to work. Yeah. And, you know, if you guys haven't tried this, I think you really are missing out. There's something very important here. Check it out.
I don't know if you see the work we do on crypto viewing, Dom, but we pretty much do this every week when we're looking at crypto targets. Because part of what we do when we're looking at a crypto is, you know, we look at the crypto itself, the technology. We try to describe the logo and branding, but we also always, as individuals, try to describe the CEO or the primary person or the team involved in that cryptocurrency, and that involves pretty much every week just going inside the minds of those people and extracting whatever information that we want to get. But the thing is, I don't know if it's telepathic because it's just one way. They never know that we're there.
They never know. That's right.
Or like, what about that?
I know now, Daz.
What about that time when Edward saw the same table of people as Dick Allgaier, and he knew there were 10 people around Dick Allgaier's table? I mean, what? I mean, that was the coolest thing, I thought. It was a boardroom table of executives, you know, and Edward was saying, as he was RVing, he said, I know Dick's going to have 10 people or something like that. Like right when he was RVing it, he knew that Dick would have 10 people around that table. What's that? That's
yeah,
telepathy.
you guys should try it, and you just build it. Cue yourself in an RV session. If you feel that there's a life form at the target, a human life form or whatever, then move yourself inside that life form and ask questions. Say, okay, what's this person feeling? What do you got to think to yourself first, because you're a bit like a detective trying to solve a case. You've got to think, so what questions do I need to ask this life form to get the information that I need to answer my questions? And then just write down the question you're asking, and then write down the answer that comes back from that. And in most cases, I would say pretty much all the cases within the crypto view ones that we're doing, the ones that we can feed back on anyway, the data is pretty accurate when we get feedback on these people. If especially for myself, if I notice that there's a very dark feeling person with some mind or mental issues, I find when we get the feedback that when I look at that person that they are generally a little bit dodgy in their decision making, and that gives me huge insight. And no, I'm not investing my money in anything this person does, because I'm a great believer in you don't invest in the properties, you invest in the people that are supporting the properties. But it's an easy tool to do. And I recommend it. As David said, have a look out there. TDS used to have their gingerbread man tool for doing this. On my remote view website, I also have a few examples of a medical remote viewing where I used a template along a similar lines. So it's just literally a template of the human body, the etheric body, and all sorts of bodies like that, which I just literally probed for information in relation to target people, and it gave really accurate medical data for that person. And that was working with Andrew Usher, who was working as a doctor at the time on patients that allowed us to do this, but under blind circumstances. So it's very easy to do. And as Don said, it can give you a wealth of information.
It is
like to-
super easy. I'll chip in briefly on that topic. I think the perceived difficulty maybe is about targeting or focusing your awareness on the right information, because like Daz says, you can do it on the etheric body or the astral body or the mental body, and these are just concepts from occultism. You can do it on chakras. When I do a gingerbread, I use chakras, and I'm not even really sure that I believe I have chakras, but they have symbolic meaning. So when I probe one, I know what I mean, and it's a concept. It's like a targeting coordinate.
Okay, so this is exactly what I was looking for, because you have a technique and it works. And Des just talked about, his technique was to move inside the person and then ask questions. Now I'm just looking at my notes. It says, I intend to contact a person and I think, please contact such and such. And then I go dead. I go completely silent and I wait for something.
Stop being so kind, Don.
Maybe they don't want to talk.
And then I hear back. Hold on, be patient here. So I want to contact such and such, and then I wait, and I hear one of these responses. He, she is listening. He, she is busy. He, she is asleep. Now, just to add to this, spirit channeling. If I try to contact someone and they're deceased, they're never asleep. What does that say?
It's hard to feedback on anything like that. So
Bingo.
I don't know how to do it. But don't be so nice. You're in, maybe it's because, I do controlled remote viewing, and it's like you're in control. I don't wait for permission to do anything, because I don't believe I'm actually in the head of a person. It's just data that's in this vast library that I'm accessing. So if I want this data about how that person's feeling in their mind, or what they're thinking that they're going to do over the next 6 months, that data's there and it's accessible.
I mean, you can pull out people's experience. Early on, I had this really impactful experience where I got task blind with some guy who had PTSD from some sort of like military black ops thing, and he was like abusing his girlfriend, and he was this horrible guy. But I actually got like a 1% intensity flavor of what it was like to experience his constant kind of flashbacks and fear and stuff. It wasn't the way that I would approach that target now, let's say. But you can pull that stuff out. Just go and ask a specific question. You know, what's bothering you right now? What's on your mind consciously? What's on your mind subconsciously? You can dig in at any level of detail just the same as you can with a physical target.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is kind of what I was like looking for. This sort of information. Others are doing it. They're using it in different ways. This is very helpful.
So something
Don,
that
your ideograms look like, for life forms, look like the loop, you know, the classic loop shape. So close your eyes, imagine drawing one of those in sparkly energy in the air, let it be whatever color it wants to be. State your intention of what life form, could be a person, could be an animal. I've done it with my dog with shocking results before.
Interesting.
And then visualize their face off in the distance, zooming up and filling the space made by that upright loop. And then ask your questions. You probably get an emotional impact. And then dig, and they will never know you've done it. You can do that in 10 seconds.
The information that
I've done it with the dog too.
Yeah, the information that I've gotten is generally clairaudient. I hear words. I don't see faces. Visuals, I don't know. I guess I spent too long just recording dreams, or, you know, the conversations in my dreams.
I don't get very good visuals either. I imagine what my face looks like and pull that up as a matter of sort of intent setting.
But I do get, you know, pretty accurate audible, you know, mental whispers or whatever you call it, and the information tends to be accurate. It's surprising.
Well, be more specific and less ethical, and you'll have even more exciting experiences.
Less
I do this, and this person is here, and they are listening, and they will know who they are when I say this. But there is a person on the remote viewing Discord who sometimes takes a long time to express themselves, and it just said so and so is typing for ages, and I just get bored and read their mind and reply to their point, and then they're like, God damn it. And, you know, because it's literally, this is so easy. It is quicker than waiting for them to type the thing out in English. Just try it, do it.
All right, yeah, good for you, David. That's
If
great.
you cross
Thank you
ethical
for saying.
lines, you'll know about it. You'll find your own.
Okay.
Because a lot of stuff you don't want to know, and you'll probably naturally avoid that stuff, you know, so don't worry about it too much.
All right, thank you.
Great question there. Anita, go ahead. You're on mute again. Yeah.
I just realized on the topic of, especially, can remote viewers see other remote viewers psychically? Can we detect each other? I've had it confirmed so many times when someone from the RV community reads my post and they're putting a lot of thought into it. Like, imagine this, a remote viewer is reading the post written by a remote viewer and they're putting a lot of focus and emotion into reading it, and they're thinking of that person. They're basically sending signals across. I will see a person, I know what they're thinking and their emotions, and I can feel their emotions, and I will go and check, and yes, the timestamp shows that that person was reading and interacting with my post at that exact time. I've had it confirmed so many times. It only happens with people who are actually good remote viewers, like people who have developed some kind of psychic antenna. So people who are just dabbling on the topic, it doesn't happen with them. So there's something about remote viewers. I think when we focus on something, we're sending signals or reading signals. That happens a lot. So I really think that could set up some kind of an experiment here between remote viewers. If we can sense each other, it would be really cool.
Yeah, well, what we'll do is after this later on today, I'll start a thread on the Facebook thing, and we'll see if we can come up with a protocol and some people that want to do something like this. No problems. Brett, go ahead. You had your hand up a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah. So it's to kind of add on just my opinion on what you were talking about, Dawn. I think the idea of telepathy, I'm, to be honest, not sold on. And it's not that I'm not sold on that the experience of it happens, because I've had it more times than I can count, especially with people that I'm close with. But it's what exactly is it that's going on, I think, is potentially being misattributed. And so I think, I mean, you go back to, I remember as a kid, I would watch, what were those? They were the X-Men cartoons, and you'd have Xavier putting his hand up to his head, and he's got these waves coming out of his head. And I think that that is the popular idea around, well, this is what's happening, is you're sending out a wave that no one can see, and someone is receiving it, and then it's impacting their system like it's a phone call. And I think that my personal take on it is I'm not sure that that's actually the correct model for necessarily what's going on, and based a little bit upon how perhaps the model that I feel is most accurate for how remote viewing works, where there's the way I would describe it, at least as a model, is it's not that you're sending out a wave and someone else is picking it up. The way that it makes sense to me to describe it is that there's think of it as like layers of reality. There's physical layer of reality, and then there's another one that is non-physical, which is an informational level of reality. And our receiver, our brain, our receiver that gives us the experience, also has the ability to tap into that non-physical layer. Some people call this a library of information that makes up what exists in physical reality, what someone might be doing on the other side of the planet, something that might be going on tomorrow, something that happened yesterday, is that there's like a storage of information that just exists, and you have the ability to turn your attention to it. That's how we kind of describe as one of the models for remote viewing. And it's a guess, it's a hypothesis, just what feels right to me to describe is I feel what may be going on when we describe, oh, there's telepathy occurring, is how do you know that you're simply not turning your attention to this informational level of reality and saying, oh, because in there would be their reaction, past, present, and future, just like your reaction is in there, just like all these other reactions are in there. And so is it that you're simply parsing it out in real time? And so it seems like, oh yeah, there's a direct line to you from that person. Or is it what's actually going on is you're just plucking out a very specific piece of information from that informational level of reality and then attributing it to, oh, that's happening from them right now. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the experience would be the same. The question I have is what's the right model to use? And so far, I've seen more evidence to suggest that we're dealing a little bit more with just information from non-physical than we are with some, unknown wave of communication energetically that's traveling from one person's head to another, which is usually, I'm not sure if that's exactly what you even would describe telepathy, but I know that's the popular idea of what is going on. So I guess that's just my take on it and a different perspective, perhaps.
I think that idea of telepathy involving things going from one head to another rather presupposes that consciousness occurs in the head, which it may not.
I have a couple of reactions. Okay, Brett, first of all, from my point of view, I don't care what it is. I don't care what the model is. I just want to know whether the information I'm getting is accurate. That's the first point. The second point is, it seems like I have developed a rather friendly technique where I'm looking here, please contact such and such. And then I wait for them to respond and acknowledge. Whereas Des admitted he has a more invasive technique. Doesn't make any difference. The information seems to work. That's the thing. That's what I'm calling telepathy. I don't care, whether I'm accessing a molecule inside your brain, a couple of chromosomes, I don't care. It's just information. It's accurate. It works.
Sure.
By the way, that this whole issue of telepathy, I don't know, Des, if you've experienced this, but after you do this for a while, you start to get confused on what exactly it is you are contacting, which is sort of like what you're talking about, Brett. Am I contacting the person? Am I contacting their mind? Am I contacting elements in their body? When I hear telepathic messages that are coming from, I think, outside, am I actually talking to some element of my human body that has consciousness and is just relaying information? I mean, it becomes this whole idea of your body and your mind as being two different things really becomes a very interesting question.
I think it's what you make it, though. It's what you believe. You create your own reality around you. I don't believe there's any travel. I don't believe that I'm getting anything from any targets, any people, or anything. I think I subscribe to Brett's thing. I believe, like physics is showing us, everything in the universe is connected at an information level, and it's just information. So the information is actually nowhere other than, and then actually all information from the universe is inside of me, and I'm just diverting my attention towards that. So that's why I don't feel like I'm invading anyone or being personal when I'm getting the information about a person, because it's just pure universal information.
Yeah, it's already you.
Yeah.
This is why I think this is why I think the model does matter. I think if you're only considering, like, does it exist? Is it happening? I think most of us here have probably had experiences of it. We'll say this is part of pretty common experience for people who are doing these types of practices. But why I think the model matters is because it has to do with, there's a difference between going to a library and reading about someone who's a public figure versus invading their home when they don't want, and asking them questions like a paparazzi individual. So the question is, what is actually going on? Are you, and I think you're coming, if I'm understanding you correctly, Dawn, you're like, you put out the plea, if you're available, hey, answer. It's not mandatory, which, comes from the perspective of, it's like you're actually going into their space that you may not be wanted there, and you don't want to infringe upon someone's private space or private thoughts. Whereas
exactly.
if telepathy is sending out and receiving like this, the popular culture idea, that makes more sense to be, you should be respectful of people's not only physical autonomy, but maybe also their psychical, mental autonomy.
I find that I'm automatically respectful in that way, in my physical life.
But David, it doesn't that whole idea doesn't make any sense whatsoever if it's a library with like a bunch of books in it.
It does in a way.
It makes no sense.
Imagine I give you a URL and I'm like, if you watch this is like the feed from the camera I hid in someone's alarm clock, and you'll really violate the privacy of your mum. Right? You're not going to click the link, right? Are you? You don't want to know. You don't want to see that. Do you? I mean, maybe you do, but
I think you're talking about a different issue at the moment. You're talking about, do you want to see? There's information that you prefer not to look at, which I'm not actually referring to.
I have an urge not to look at that. I don't want to know stuff. It's not in anybody's best interest for me to know stuff. And so when I reach out, including to you, I might add, and be like, "Why didn't you reply to my message? God damn it!" And I'm like, "Okay, there is a clear I don't want to know barrier right there." So I just don't know, and I'm just like, that's fine. I don't mind, And
I think that's fine. I don't think we're talking about the same thing, David. I think you're talking about still, if I keep it within the framework of a library, if there's a section in the library that you would prefer not to know what's in those books, by all means, don't go down that library. Maybe there's, really graphic, extreme things in one of the rows, because it's information about all of reality is what we're talking about. So don't go there. No one's forcing you to go there.
No.
The question is, are you infringing into someone else's space if you access information that exists simply at an informational level of the universe? I don't think that makes any logical sense to me, because you're not actually going into someone's space.
If I hide a CCTV camera in your alarm clock in your bedroom, then... No, serious analogy. Then I'm not actually going into your space, but I'm still accessing the information, and I still don't want to access it, and you still don't want me to access it. I think
there's still a difference, though, because you're not putting the model. The idea is that there's still a difference. Is that if for whatever reason all information has to be in this library, period, for it to be this idea of an underpinning level of reality. All information exists, just like if you have a video game
that
I'm programmer
sure
makes,
if I wanted
all
to.
the
What I'm saying
information
is,
about that world has to already exist in ones and zeros before you can go experience it. Does that mean that, you shouldn't look at some ones and zeros because it's part of the experience? I think that's up to the individual, which is what you're talking about, which I think is totally fine. It's appropriate to determine what you want to look at
I think
and what
what
you
I'm
don't.
saying probably supports.
But you're not going into someone else's space from my perspective and infringing upon it.
To go into
if you were in a library,
space
it's a physical. You're taking a physical. It's like if you're at the grocery store and someone comes up to you and it goes up 2 inches from you and gets in your personal bubble. Maybe they even bump into you, and you're like, "Excuse me, what's going on here? What are you doing?" That would be very rude, first of all, and it would be very off-putting. And it's not something that in normal society and common it's not ethics, it's just etiquette, you wouldn't do. I don't think that translates over to what we're doing here, because you're not.
I totally agree.
It's not the same thing.
I've never, apart from Josh, but he always thinks somebody's there, so it's hard to say. But
and so this is the only reason I'm going down this road, is because I think that the reason why I think the model matters is because it's how you react, and what you choose to do is going to be molded from your disposition towards whether you're actually going into someone else's apartment at 7:30 a.m., in a mental out-of-body experience, and you're there, and maybe they're trying to have a protective shield around them to prevent, it's like, are you just barking up a wrong tree, which is just a misinterpretation of what's really going on? And to be honest, I don't know the real answer. I'm just giving, my opinion on it. That's all this is. Yeah. Or are you just going into a library and opening a book? In which case,
I've never felt like I'm invading somebody's space in the physical.
But if that is what was going on,
yeah, right. I agree with that.
A whole group of people could argue that you shouldn't do it because you're invading someone's space.
If I am pulling the thoughts out of your mind, does it matter where I'm standing when I do it? Because that's what happens. That's the outcome. And if you don't want those thoughts to be,
but the thoughts aren't in that. The thoughts aren't in the mind.
It does matter.
The thoughts are in the library, not in the mind.
Yeah, but there's still the thoughts that are in the mind.
But there's
my intent is to look at that.
An author's thoughts are in a book.
Find what's in there.
An author's
I'm not
thoughts
sure
are
this
in
is
a book.
a useful distinction as to where we. This is like, would you download a car? This is like pirating movies. You still have
it is. It's useful because, just take the very simple analogy of, is it okay in common society to go to invade someone's house and take a picture of them with a physical camera? Obviously not. It's called private property. But information that exists at this informational level of reality is not private property.
I steal all your nudes, but I never go into your house. That's just as bad. I still have your nudes.
You're conflating it again, though. That's a totally different thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the activity of going into someone's private space in common culture is not only what's against the law, but secondly, it's not something you would do.
Can I get some ground rules going here? Because when I was dealing with this topic of telepathy, I was never talking about visually invading someone's privacy. I was talking about asking them a question. It's information. It's something that, they're willing to provide if they give it.
But that's you being nice. I'm not as nice as you see. You're asking for permission. You're asking to do it. I just do it because I don't believe I'm interacting with a human being. I believe it's information.
Yeah, you're asking like, hey, would you show me that page in your autobiography where you answer this question? And they're like, no, that's private. Whereas Daz and I and probably everybody else are just like, give me the information.
Okay, well,
could I come in, Daz? You say that you don't ask. You joked that Don was too polite. So what do you do if you don't ask? What do you do?
Well, I'm in a remote viewing session, and let's say it's like a crypto target, and I want to see what the CEO's doing. How the CEO feels about their product. I literally just write on a piece of paper, get the thoughts of the CEO on how he feels about this product, and whatever comes through, I just write down. I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm invading him or going anywhere, because my belief system is I don't go to any targets. It's just pure information in the universe. So I'm just going somewhere in the universe, and that information is floating there, and I'm just grabbing it and bringing it back to me.
Right. So are you getting this information from the universe, something which is out there? Or
Yeah, I don't believe
the
there's any
thought of that
evidence.
person?
There's no evidence whatsoever anywhere that any remote viewer travels to any target.
There's no evidence that any of this information that we regard as inside ourselves that might hypothetically be violated by somebody being inside ourselves is actually there in the first place, though. Maybe it's all just in the library. And we
Yes.
just happen to be obsessively reading one book, which is the book of us, of being an individual. Like,
Right.
Absolutely, that's how I believe it
What
is.
a
yeah.
concept. Wow.
So are you tapping into this quote unquote library?
Yeah, I don't
Or-
call it library.
Or are you
you know,
tapping into the
I use the
thought
Star
which
Wars
is linked to
enigma.
the
I just call it the force or the field. It's this informational energy level that pervades everything in the universe, and we just move our attention to it. You move your attention anywhere, and you get the information.
I'm
Right.
not even sure I know where it comes from.
So this library is, say for instance, you want to get into the mind of me, right?
Yes.
And my thoughts are out there anyway.
Yes.
So are you going out there to get what I'm thinking? Are you
No.
completely bypassing me?
No,
Or
your faults are already in me.
your
Well,
Everything,
time and
every
space
piece of
don't-
information in the universe is already within every single one of us. We just have to move our intention to look for that information. Most of the time, our intention's thinking about what's on the computer screen, what we're having for lunch tomorrow. Just focus your attention on anything you want in the universe, and that information is there available to you. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I don't care where it comes from. Just like I can probe somebody's chakras without actually believing that chakras are a meaningful thing that I might have
Absolutely.
in me.
That's
I
what I'm
can
saying.
still get meaningful information because it's just asking a question.
right.
We're all,
So
it's
when
like the Matrix. We're all creating our own reality. You know, if you believe you don't want to do something, or it's unethical for you to do something, or it's not right for you to do something, you'll find that you will set these patterns up and you'll behave in that certain way. You know, there are remote viewers out there that have problems seeing certain things at targets, and that's based on their internal system. Not that no one can access that information, because the next viewer next to them can easily access the very same information.
Brett, didn't you have a student who couldn't view the past because they thought time travel was impossible or something? But
I don't know if that was me.
Yeah,
That was a student of mine.
can I throw in a perspective here?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you recently posted a cartoon where one guy's looking through a hole in the wall, seeing water, saying it's raining when it was really just a tank of water that was leaking. And another guy's looking over the top of the wall and seeing it's a clear day and saying that it was just your perspective. They were both correct. And perhaps the same thing is true here, that if you function in the way that Anita does, or that the Farsight team does, they have two-way communication with the people they contact, presuming that they're sensitive enough to be aware that you're there. But you can also have an alternate way of approaching it, which is what you're talking about, where you just look at a library, maybe something analogous to what's referred to as the Akashic records or something like that. So it really is just the method that you're using or the perspective that you're using, but that both approaches are correct. That's what I'd like to throw out.
That is a very interesting observation. Thank you for mentioning that.
I think that's what I said when I said you are creating how it works for you in everything you do.
Somehow I didn't pick it up until just now.
If you believe, if you believe a certain thing internally, that's what works for you. This whole thing we're all doing is so malleable. That's why any method works of remote viewing.
Wow.
Any method works. You could literally remote view targets by dropping a pen on a sheet of paper, and you do that enough for 10 years, and that will give you a method to get accurate remote viewing. Anything works. The information's there, available to anyone. But that you should think about using that information ethically once you get it. You shouldn't try to do any harm or damage to people with information you pull from the universe.
All right. Well, actually, I got the information that I was looking for, I think, right there. It's sort of like how you look at it, and the method and approach that you take is how it's going to work. Pretty cool.
Whatever you choose is going to work for you. Yeah.
Amazing, really.
Sasha, you've had your hand up for a while. Is it on this topic or is it something else?
Kind of related to this topic, actually, yes.
Go for it.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it, Sasha.
So I was initially kind of thinking what Paul has just said, that there doesn't have to be one explanation. It's very possible that they're both exist simultaneously. And then something that's been occurring to me a lot more lately is the idea that there isn't necessarily only one library either. And it seems to me that it's quite possible that different groups might create their own libraries of the information. And I suspect that different methods of remote viewing or psychic viewing might actually be tracking down the information in different libraries. And this is something I was ranting to about someone a few weeks ago. And so I'm just trying to get a little bit of coherence on that. But it seems to me that spontaneous psi is a lot more accurate and a lot more detailed and maybe a lot more on point. Whereas remote viewing, there's a lot more noise and you have to do a lot of training to learn how to get the signal without all the noise, right?
Well, there's
Or
no
practice.
evidence for any of this, Sasha.
Sorry?
Where's the evidence that says the remote viewing's got more noise than natural? Because from my perspective, it's been trained in both. Natural is way, way, way more noisy than remote viewing.
Okay, so then I'll describe it differently. Yeah, because you're right, that's true. Okay, in my experience, I found I have a lot of noise when I do remote viewing. When I've had more raw psychic experiences, there wasn't all the noise, and it was a different experience. It was more organic. It was more, the answers were whole, complete, full, answering what I needed to know. And so I'm just wondering, I guess maybe I shouldn't generalize. I'm just wondering from my own experiences, maybe if it's possible that there are different libraries that we can access. We always talk as though there's only one solution, and that comes from, I think, science's method of publishing, which is you put a theory and then someone counters your theory. Even if they think parts of it are true, right? You still argue that someone else's theory is wrong to push your own theory. That's how you get published. And I think that kind of colors how we do this. It's not necessarily that the information is either in a library or it also exists on a tangible physical plane, right? There's nothing that precludes the idea that some groups, some civilizations, I don't really know what, but there's nothing that would prevent them from building their own. And we were talking about artificial intelligence earlier. There's nothing that would prevent them from building a system that simulates maybe the information system that you're talking about, that you're maybe accessing. And so it's not clear to me that we're necessarily all accessing the same database, or that all the databases are equal in terms of ease of access or in terms of reliability. Do you know what I'm saying?
But I'm just confused on why you think there would be more than one record. Because even if there are two opposing points of views, they'd still be in the same record.
But can we maybe take a library as, you know, analogous to just there's a viewer and there's some information and there's some constraints possibly on what information the viewer can access, because there's the issue of telepathic overlay, right, where sometimes what the viewer is reporting is what the tasker wants them to report, and sometimes maybe it's ground truth. So we already know that there's viewers are picking up on data from multiple sources, because
right, there's human error, right? But what I'm suggesting is, let's say, okay, if you take the internet, Google has backup servers, right? So the information that's on the internet right now in this moment, there's a copy of it that exists on the backup server, the backup drives, the backup files that Google will hold. And if you go to the archive sites, you can find websites that are no longer existing now on Google, but you can still access that information because it's been archived, right?
Yeah.
And so if you were to break into Google and steal some of their backup servers and then build your own internet from that information, and then my browser, I can choose to either Google or I can choose to go through this other site that's offering me the information that they stole from Google, that they've added to, that they've edited, that they've maybe indexed differently.
I would say the information we're accessing is a bit like the blockchain, in that all information is in the blockchain, and it can't, if the blockchain's like the Bitcoin blockchain, it's there and it can't be changed. It's just there. It's pure information that can't be changed and mutated. You take a copy of it, it has to tally with all the other copies for it to be credible.
But if you can put yourself floating above Stonehenge, then you're adding information to the location of Stonehenge.
Oh, that's only assuming that he wasn't actually there.
Yes, and you got to take away time as well.
And you've got to factor in the fact that there is communication somehow between the tasker's intent and the stuff the viewer reports.
I think that's a bias of convenience. I think it's easier for us to understand there only being one system. But just because it's easier for us to understand, I don't think that proves that it's true. I also think we have this bias of thinking that somehow, because we're naturally a part of the system, that it's somehow designed for our use. But I think we're more like cats that are playing with someone's cell phone. Oh, we happen to press the keys and we're seeing something interesting.
Well, we're all
but that
trying to
doesn't
make
mean the
sense
cell phone
of
was
this.
designed for your pet cat's usage. And so
we're all trying to make sense of this system that we're in, but like, even if we are in some kind of alien simulation, or we're limited in which libraries we're allowed to visit, then that's what we've got to work with, isn't it? So
yeah, I guess I don't understand the point of your
why it makes a
distinction,
difference.
Sasha.
It makes a difference because if different methods of remote viewing are accessing different databases, and some databases are maybe more corrupt than
Sasha,
others.
that's a huge jump. Why would different methods access different databases?
Well, it's like Anita was saying. Anita's developed her own system of remote viewing. She seems to be experiencing that the people she remote views can actually see her physically in their space.
Yeah, but
So
there's no feedback for that though. That could just be experiential.
Feedback, right? So she's had people report having seen her in their space. So she's had feedback for it. So whatever it is that she's doing something differently from what you're doing with CRV, and she's getting different results from it. And you're saying, well, I mean, instead of dismissing her experiences and saying, well, you're just imagining this, or you don't have feedback for that, maybe what's actually happening is that her experience is as valid and it is different, because maybe it's not just that she's using a different technique and that has different outcomes. Maybe she's accessing a different data stream. And
No, it's just that we're all different. We all experience everything we do differently. Two people can look at the same color and see different things.
That's true. Yes, you're right.
This
That's
is
fair
reminding me. This is reminding me.
Rose, just before you jump in, you're right. I can see that might be wrong. It just seems to me that there's a lot of debate over which model is correct, but I don't know that there has to only be one.
Well,
just
this
because
is reminding
that is
me.
easier for us to wrap our minds
This is
around.
reminding me of the argument that Paul was having with the Romans, where they're talking about one spirit with many gifts, whereas Paul is addressing this confusion over how many spirits there are. And he's saying there's one signal with many gifts, many different functionalities and facets. And the Romans were thinking, well, it must be a different spirit for every manifestation that we're seeing. There must be many spirits. And this seems to be the argument, the same discussion that we're having. How do we distinguish? How do we discern the signal? And and decide, what it is we're receiving and from where. This is an age-old problem. So I just am wanting to remind us of that. This is not new. And it's so fascinating that it's not new, but it seems new every time someone discusses it. So, Sasha, I admire that you brought that up and were brave to put that out there, because it's a good question. It's a really good question. How many signals are there? Do some of them cross each other? We're expanding our mind, and I'm really enjoying this conversation today. So thanks for letting me be enthusiastic and butt in there. I have another thing. I have been thinking that I'm looking at this from the evolutionary point of view. So where does this ability, telepathy, come from? And I think it's a survival mechanism. If you're a prey that's able to anticipate your predator better, you can read their mind, you're going to survive. And if you're a slave that's being abused, if you can read the mind of your master and prevent that, you're going to live longer, you're going to survive better, you're going to have a better life. I think telepathy is a survival mechanism. And what we're doing now is we're using it for other things, but it's sort of a clunky old function that came along with evolution, and now we're trying to refine it. And it's not refined, it's messy. So yeah, what a great conversation. This is so interesting.
Sasha, just to answer some of your your comments. When you said, could it be that different methods are accessing different databases? I'm just trying to think. I think most of us here are practicing remote viewing, which we kind of think is pretty specific. I don't know about the rest of you, because I don't know everyone's history, but I was quite fortunate enough to have trained in, all the classical stuff like clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling, tarot, tea leaves, sand, you name it, I did it. What I get through remote viewing data-wise, in the feel of it and where it comes from, is exactly the same as every single one of those other disciplines I mentioned, other than it's just a tool that we use, and the data's pure on itself, and for me it just feels like it's interpreted through the tool we feel that we're using at that time to do it. And I think that when there's a channeler, I think that they're speaking to some discarnate entity, which happened in the Stargate unit. Angela Ford used that method. The pure data is exactly the same. She just used it through her own interpretive tool, which gave her that experience that it felt different, but I don't think it actually was different at its core. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point of view. I'm just not sure that it's the correct one. And I'm not saying that I'm sure that what I was proposing is the correct one. I guess I'm just wondering.
It's one of those age-old questions, I guess. Anita, you've had your hand up for a long while now.
As for there not being evidence whether we can see each other with this kind of remote viewing or just spiritually visiting another site. Fabian Rush is, many of you know him. He used to, and I hope he still does, more tasks and targets for a group of remote viewers, and he's just started remote viewing himself. But we had an interesting experience where I was suddenly seeing him in my home as if he was like a ghost, but almost physical. And I would just look at him and wonder, why Fabian in my home? And this was occurring for a long time. He then contacted me after I had this experience, and I didn't tell him of my experience. He said he was meditating at home and he was confused. He didn't understand why, but he saw me, and turns out we had seen each other in the same time period. Neither of us intended or even, so That's something which has some verification of happening.
I do believe there are, and I have to be careful how I say this, anecdotal experiences that people have had. But what I'm saying is, I have seen to date no scientifically recorded remote viewing protocol experiments where this has happened and been recorded. That's the only way I can put it, really.
Under a controlled setting.
Under
Yeah.
a controlled setting where all other options are taken off the table, and it only happened under, like we do with remote viewing. We've all had these anecdotal experiences, so we know that something's happening there. All I can say to you, under all the RV sessions that I've seen under scientific protocol settings, I've never ever seen this appear in those conditions. Which is, yeah. But I don't know why. But as I said, I think it might be because the intent's not there. I don't know why, but I haven't seen it yet in any ones I've seen. But again, if we can put off an experiment to measure for this, it'd be a fantastic experiment. So it's definitely worth us looking at. Henny, you got your hand up, because we should finish up this pretty soon, because we've been going just over 2 hours now. If that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, I just remembered that not long ago, John Adams tasked me with something, and I had to redo like the task, I think 3 or 4 times, because I kept getting something that I only could understand as an out-of-body experience. So I kept seeing, okay, there's a biological, but that looks funny. It's energetic, it's hovering. Set aside all that out-of-body experience. That's stupid, that cannot be. Okay, finish, break, start again. I start again. There's a biological, this is energetic, it looks strange. This is an out-of-body experience. So I think I did like 4 times the same, going over. I must be going crazy. And I wrote to John, okay, I think I'm losing the plot here, because I keep getting an out-of-body experience. And he said, oh, great, this is how it started. And so it's possible to see people, but it might be the intent. I think it's possible to see out-of-body experiencers, and I have never seen anything like that when I was doing targets. That's just my point.
Great, and thanks for sharing that, guys. Any last questions or anything anyone wants to share before we finish?
I have a quick question about the tachistoscope. Len Buchanan gave that to you, right, Daz?
The software, isn't it? I think it's on my website. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, was any modifications made to that, or is that the software as given by Len?
I have no idea. I just took the software and all the instructions and put it up. It's not something I use in any way, so I have no information on it.
Okay. For people who don't know, this is a program that will flash a picture for a set number of milliseconds or seconds, go away. And then you have to try to recall. This is a recollection training program, so that, if you start with 5 seconds and then you can sketch the target or some vague elements of it, you can keep reducing the time to the point where you can just get it in an instant, okay? Which is a lot of what like remote viewing is all about. You just get something flash of a perception. So so I'm going to be checking that out. I'm going to get it.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Don. So let's close this off this week then. And I want to thank everyone. It's been some great conversations and ideas and theories tonight. It's fantastic. And, welcome back everyone after the after Christmas break. And as I said, I probably won't do a talk next week because I have to do birthday celebrations, but it will be John Knowles with a really interesting talk the week after that. And then after the week following that again, hopefully, if all goes well, it should be Del Graff. So, get your questions ready for that one, because that'd be quite an interesting one as well. I'll let you know about the John Knows one as soon as possible. And any of you that want to carry on a chat, we usually have another chat after this on Discord. I'll post the link in the in the chat window. If you feel free to come along, we're usually there for an hour or two after this, just shooting the breeze. And again, thank you everyone for turning up tonight. It was great stuff, and we shall see you again soon.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Very
Bye.
much. Enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you.